Robert Doisneau was a French photographer. In the 1930s he used a Leica on the streets of Paris. He and Henri Cartier-Bresson were pioneers of photojournalism. He is renowned for his 1950 image Le Baiser de l'Hôtel de Ville, a photograph of a couple kissing in the busy streets of Paris. Doisneau was appointed a Chevalier of the Legion of Honor in 1984. Photographic career: Doisneau was known for his modest, playful, and ironic images of amusing juxtapositions, mingling social classes, and eccentrics in contemporary Paris streets and cafes. Influenced by the work of André copyright SZ, Hugo Niatget, and Henri Cartier-Bresson, in more than 20 books he presented a charming vision of human frailty in life as a series of quiet, incongruous moments. The marvels of daily life are so exciting. No movie director can arrange the unexpected that you find in the street. Doisneau's work gives unusual prominence and dignity to children's street culture. Returning again and again to the theme of children at play in the city, unfettered by parents. His work treats their play with seriousness and respect. Early life: Doisneau's father, a plumber, died in active service in World War I when Robert was about 4. His mother died when he was 7. He then was raised by an unloving aunt. At 13 he enrolled at the École Collège, a craft school from which he graduated in 1929 with diplomas in engraving and lithography. There he had his first contact with the arts, taking classes in figure drawing and still life. When he was 16 he took up amateur photography, but was reportedly so shy that he started by photographing cobblestones before progressing to children and then adults. At the end of the 1920s Doisneau found work as a draftsman in the advertising industry at Atelier Ullman, a creative graphic studio that specialized in the pharmaceutical industry. Here he took an opportunity to change career by also acting as camera assistant in the studio and then becoming a staff photographer. Photography in the 1930s: in 1931 he left both the studio and advertising, taking a job as an assistant with the modernist photographer André Vigneault. In 1932 he sold his first photographic story to Excelsior magazine. In 1934 he began working as an industrial advertising photographer for the Renault car factory at Boulogne-Billancourt. Working at Renault increased Doisneau a unregistered trademark's interest in working with photography and people. In 1991 he admitted that the years at the Renault car factory marked a beginning of his career as a photographer and the end of his youth. 5 years later, in 1939, he was fired because he was constantly late. He was forced to try freelance advertising, engraving, and postcard photography to earn his living. At that time the French postcard industry was the largest in Europe. Postcards served as greetings cards as well as vacation souvenirs. In 1939 he was hired by Charles Rado of the Raffo Photographic Agency and traveled throughout France in search of picture stories. This is where he took his first professional street photographs. War service and resistance: Doisneau worked at the Raffo Agency until the outbreak of World War II, whereupon he was drafted into the French Army as both a soldier and photographer. He was in the army until 1940 and from then until the end of the war in 1945 used his draftsmanship, lettering artistry, and engraving skills to forge passports and identification papers for the French resistance. Post-war photography: some of Doisneau's most memorable photographs were taken after the war. He returned to freelance photography and sold photographs to Life and other international magazines. He briefly joined the Alliance Photo Agency but rejoined the Raffo Agency in 1946 and remained with them throughout his working life, despite receiving an invitation from Henri Cartier-Bresson to join Magnum Photos. His photographs never ridiculed the subjects. Thus he refused to photograph women whose heads had been shaved as punishment for sleeping with Germans. "I don't photograph life as it is, but life as I would like it to be." In 1948 he was contracted by Vogue to work as a fashion photographer. The editors believed he would bring a fresh and more casual look to the magazine, but Doisneau didn't unregistered trademark T enjoy photographing beautiful women in elegant surroundings. He preferred street photography. When he could escape from the studio, He photographed ever more in the streets of Paris. Group 15 was established in 1946 in Paris to promote photography as art and drawing attention to the preservation of French photographic heritage. Doisneau joined the group in 1950 and participated alongside René Jacques, Willy Ronis, and Pierre Jean. The 1950s were Doisneau's peak, but the 1960s were his wilderness years. In the 1970s Europe began to change and editors looked for new reportage that would show the sense of a new social era. All over Europe, the old-style picture magazines were closing as television received the public's attention. Doisneau continued to work, producing children's books, advertising photography, and celebrity portraits including Alberto Giacometti, Jean Cocteau, Fernand La Copyright Guerre, Georges Braque, and Pablo Picasso. Doisneau worked with writers and poets such as Blaise Cendrars and Jacques Prat copyright Vert, and he credited Prévert with giving him the confidence to photograph the everyday street scenes that most people simply ignored. Le Baiser de l'Hôtel de Ville. In 1950 Doisneau created his most recognizable work for life Le Baiser de l'Hôtel de Ville, a photograph of a couple kissing in the busy streets of Paris, which became an internationally recognized symbol of young love in Paris. The identity of the couple remained a mystery until 1992. Jean and Denise Laverne erroneously believed themselves to be the couple in the kiss, and when Robert and Annette Doisneau met them for lunch in the 1980s he did not want to shatter their dreams so he said nothing. This resulted in them taking him to court for taking their picture without their knowledge, because under French law an individual owns the rights to their own likeness. The court action forced Doisneau to reveal that he posed the shot using French sectionois d'Aubert and Jacques Cartier, lovers whom he had just seen kissing, but had not photographed initially because of his natural reserve. He approached them and asked if they would repeat the kiss. He won the court case against the Lavernes. Doisneau said in 1992, "I would never have dared to photograph people like that. Lovers kissing in the street, those couples are rarely legitimate." The couple in Le Baiser were French sectionois d'Aubert, 20, and Jacques Cartier, 23, both aspiring actors. In 2005 French sectionois Bonnet stated that, "He told us we were charming, and asked if we could kiss again for the camera. We didn't mind. We were used to kissing. We were doing it all the time then, it was delicious." Monsieur Doisneau was adorable, very low-key, very relaxed. They posed at the Place de la Concorde, the Rue de Rivoli and finally the Hôtel de Ville. The photograph was published in the 12th June 1950, issue of Life. The relationship between d'Aubert and Cartier only lasted for 9 months. d'Aubert continued her acting career, but Cartier gave up acting to become a wine producer. In 1950 French sectionois Bonnet was given an original print of the photograph, bearing Doisneau's signature and stamp, as part of the payment for her work. In April 2005 she sold the print at auction for a $155,000 to an unidentified Swiss collector via the Paris auctioneers Art Curial Briest Poulain Lafar. Personal life. In 1936 Doisneau married Pierrette Chaumaison whom he had met in 1934 when she was cycling through a village where he was on holiday. They had 2 daughters, Annette and Francine. From 1979 until his death, Annette worked as his assistant. His wife died in 1993 suffering from Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease. Doisneau died 6 months later in 1994, having had a triple heart bypass and suffering from acute pancreatitis. Annette said, "We won in the courts, but my father was deeply shocked. He discovered a world of lies, and it hurt him. The kiss ruined the last years of his life. Add that to my mother suffering from Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and I think it's fair to say he died of sadness." Doisneau was in many ways a shy and humble man, similar to his photography, still delivering his own work at the height of his fame. He chastised Francine for charging an indecent daily fee of £2,000 for his work on a beer advertising campaign. He wanted only the rate of an artisan photographer. "Maybe if I were 20, success would change me. But now I'm a dinosaur of photography." He lived in southern Paris throughout his life. He is buried in the cemetery at Rezé beside his wife. Awards and commemoration. Robert Doisneau was appointed a Chevalier of the Order of the Legion of Honor in 1984. He won several awards throughout his life, including the Balzac Prize in 1986, the Grand Prix National de la Photographie in 1983, the NIA Copyright PCE Prize in 1956, the Kodak Prize in 1947. A short film, Le Paris de Robert Doisneau, was made in 1973. In 1991 the Royal Photographic Society awarded Doisneau an honorary fellowship which is given to distinguished persons having, from their position or attainments, an intimate connection with the science or fine art of photography of the Society. In 1992 the French actress and producer Sabine Aza copyright made the film Bonjour Monsieur Doisneau. The Maison de la Photographie Robert Doisneau in Gentilly, Val-de-Marne, is a photographic gallery named in his honor. Several écoles primaires are named after him. École copyright La Copyright Menteur Robert Doisneau is at VAR Copyright Retz. The photography of Doisneau has had a revival since his death in 1994. Many of his portraits and photographs of Paris from the end of World War II through the 1950s have been turned into calendars and postcards, and have become icons of French life. The Aller copyrightee Robert Doisneau is named in his honor at the Parc de Billancourt on the site of the old Renault factory at Boulogne-Billancourt where he didn't work. Exhibitions. Publications. References. External links, official website, Encyclopædia Britannica, Robert Doisneau, Robert Doisneau's latest photo book comme un barber article du Journal de la Photographie, Maison de la Photographie Robert Doisneau, BBC News report on the auction of Le Baiser de l'Hôtel de Ville. Bruce Silverstein Gallery represents the estate of Robert Doisneau, Robert Doisneau, second snatched from eternity.